It's Thursday morning in Lagos. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the program. Imagine a Nigeria where economic growth is tangible, job creation is on the rise, a nation where national security is strengthened. That's the vision President Tinubu painted yesterday when he presented the 2025 budget that he tagged Budget of Restoration, Securing Peace, and Rebuilding Prosperity. It's a whopping 49.7 trillion naira budget, promising to drive economic growth, create opportunities, and invest in Nigeria's youthful population. The goals are quite ambitious, just as the figures. We're looking at advancing national security, creating jobs, investing in infrastructure development, and promoting national reorientation. But what does this really mean for the average Nigerian? How will this budget address pressing issues like poverty, education, and healthcare? Also, how realistic are some of the projections from inflation to exchange rate and base crude oil production assumptions, among others? That's what we're talking about today as we delve into the details of the 2025 budget. My guest is a tax and financial analyst, Chukwuemeka Eze, and we'll be exploring some of the implications, challenges, and opportunities presented by this budget and what it means for Nigeria's future growth trajectory. Mr. Eze, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning for having me.
And compliments of the season to you. Again, we saw President Tinubu acknowledging yesterday that, that things have been really difficult and sacrifices have been made. He went on to promise that these challenges will not be in vain and that the new year is promising something really better. But I want us to begin by looking at what he calls government reforms yielding results. According to him, our economy grew by 3.46% in the third quarter, up from 2.5% in the third quarter of 2023, as against global economic growth projected at 3.2%. What do you make of what he considered Nigeria's economic progress in the outgoing year vis-a-vis what majority of Nigerians experienced?
I think he was speaking of statistics because the World Bank, the IMF, they have their statistics, and the National Bureau of Statistics, that's that of Nigeria. And at the beginning of every year, or even prior to the beginning of every year, the World Bank and the IMF already have their targeted statistics for each country. So that's, I think, what he was speaking of. The one targeted for the third quarter for last year was about 3.2%. And he said that of Nigeria grew by 3.46%. But I don't know the parameters, although it depends on the parameters used. Because, you know, with the removal of oil subsidy, we no longer spend so much on oil subsidy. So one will not be surprised that there was some form of growth. So the exchange rate unification also is another measure that this present government took, expecting that the third one will land safely, but that's the tax reform bills. Indeed. And anyway, that one is on its own journey.
Absolutely.
But I think that will cap it up. But instead of looking at what 2.5% of the third quarter of 2023 and 3.46% of third quarter of 2024, we should be looking at what was the projection of the World Bank, IMF, for the third quarter of 2023. So that will be, we can do a proper comparative analysis, whether we were doing well at third quarter of 2022. And in any case, that was when the policies, especially removal of oil subsidy and the other one, when they were just beginning, there was so much panic. And one could understand why the economy slowed down at that time. So
it's
I think the confidence is
if the metrics government is using tallies with what the Nigerian people are using when it comes to the cost, the price of commodity, the standard of living, and their purchasing power. But I wanted to quickly speak to the implications of the foreign reserves, which he mentioned yesterday is nearly $42 billion.
$42 billion.
He mentioned that it will help buffer against external economic shocks. Break it down for us.
All right. Usually, when you have what we have is not even quite commendable. When you do comparative analysis with other countries we are competing with, for instance, Egypt and South Africa, within Africa, if you look at those ones, our $42 billion is not something to rejoice about. Then if you look at the D8, some countries within the medium powers that call themselves D8, they have an organization called D8. That's Nigeria, Iran, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Turkey, Malaysia, Pakistan. By the time you look at it, you discover that Nigeria is having almost the least. So it's not something to rejoice about, but without looking
relative to where we're coming from.
Yeah, relative to where we are coming from, you can make a lot of imports and be confident that your letters of credit will not be rejected because you have. That's why I said it's a buffer. So we have a fallback position. That would have been different, assuming if you say that the foreign reserve is $10 billion, that would have become very worrisome. So we can confidently, while doing the balancing act, be confident that, for those essentials, we have supposedly a relatively healthy foreign reserve to make, possibly ensure that our letters of credit, foreign banks respect the orders we make as business people in this country.
Before presenting the 2025 spending plan yesterday, he also he reported that our current trade surplus, which now stands at 5.8 trillion naira, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. Do you see that significantly contributing to our economic growth and development in real time?
I don't see that as significant, especially when it is in naira. When you measure it in dollars. You discover it's very low. So it's not something to rejoice about. That's in the meantime. Besides, but I think there will be improvement if we really get into our own part in the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. If we exploit it more and more in the coming year, the trade balance will be better than what we currently have. But we need to walk the talk, because why many Nigerians are skeptical about many of these things, that the talk had always been there, but the action had always not been significant over the years. No matter the name the budget is called, this one is currently a budget of restoration, securing peace, and rebuilding prosperity. Nigerians are looking forward to see the prosperity in the markets,
beyond
in their homes, beyond the words. So Nigerians will really want to see action, see the government walk the talk, and because they say the devil is in the details.
Absolutely. We're going to have to remain optimistic with the AFCTA you talked about, because with the exits of Burkina Faso, Niger, and what other country? Mali from ECOWAS. Even though they are saying the free visa policy is still there, we'll see how it goes on, how it plays out in the coming year. So government met 75% of its revenue target this year, 85% of its expenditure target, reaching about 21.6 trillion naira. Let's talk about the impact of this on our fiscal sustainability from the figures Mr. President doled out yesterday.
Yes, with the increase in to 49.7, right? trillion for 2025.
For 2024. Expenditure, 85%
I
of our expenditure target,
know.
yes.
Where we are going to.
Okay, where we're going to.
You have read out figures for 2024.
Indeed.
For 2025, I see government being more aggressive with revenue generation and collection, especially after the passage of the tax reform bills. Government may go beyond the 75%.
We're going to get to 2025, but I was really probing how well you think we fared at 75% of revenue target this year.
How we fared.
Is that a pass mark?
Sure. I mean, that's an A. If you're a student and you take an exam and you score 75%, that's a pass mark.
And then we had 85% of
expenditures, but that shows we still run on deficit in all these areas, both in budget, in terms of revenue and expenditure. And each time you run on such deficits, that means you will be doing more borrowing.
Indeed.
Because the money must come from somewhere.
Absolutely. Let's turn our attention now to the 2025 budget itself. President Tinubu himself acknowledged that this is an ambitious spending plan. He calls it an ambitious but necessary budget to secure our future. So we're looking at a projected revenue of 34.82 trillion. That's about 90% increase from the outgoing year. How realistic is this target?
We have to take it from many dimensions. For the oil revenue, I'm wondering whether OPEC will allow us do up to 2 million barrels per day.
Okay.
Upward from the 1.5 million barrels per day. So if OPEC allows us to do so, then we'll be nearer the promised land. But if OPEC refuses, if they pegs us at anything less than 2 million barrels per day, that will become problematic. So I think the budget is looking at about between 2.2 million barrels.
Indeed.
So we need to have basically that, oil remains our first line of consideration when we are talking about revenue in this country. Nigeria is still a resource, natural resource dependent country. So, so if we don't, that means we'll be doing more borrowing, and the deficit will increase, and there will be more pressure on the local market because it takes time to syndicate foreign loans. So if you put much more pressure, you crowd out the local creditors. Not the local creditor. You crowd out the local businessmen who depend mainly on the local creditors. And that will be a bit disastrous.
We'll talk about the deficit shortly because that's also a big talking point in this budget. But some analysts say they hope this ambitious revenue projection wouldn't translate to additional pressure on taxes, levies, fees on investors in the economy. You are the tax expert here. What do you think?
Certainly the pressure will be there. One shouldn't dismiss that because the minds of the agencies are there. A lot of campaigns, enlightenment have been done. Tax administrators are just waiting for the tax reform bills to be passed. And whether passed or not, definitely, as the day goes on, governments are under pressure from the governed to fulfill their election promises. So, and the only way they can go about that more and more is to get more revenue. So the pressure will be there. Non-oil revenue, those tax authorities will certainly put that pressure.
But the expectation is that the tax reform bills, if it becomes law, will reduce the tax burden on the people. With that change, if it becomes law because of the pressure?
Your tax burden may be reduced, but the tax pressure may not be reduced. Yes, I give you an instance. Previously, there was a laissez-faire system whereby you didn't pay certain taxes, and nobody bothered you. So at that time, the pressure wasn't there. But now, with increased technology, whatever you spend anywhere is captured somewhere with a software. So at the end of the day, for instance, when you are giving tax ID, all your expenditures wherever will be captured. So it will be easy it won't be a situation where you spend hundreds of millions, perhaps doing a party, and eventually you come and pay your personal income tax as 150,000. That era will be gone. So the pressure will be there, whether the tax burden is higher or later. But the fact that you know as you're spending, there's a big eye somewhere in the form of technology that will eventually capture all these transactions.
Indeed.
That will be sufficient pressure on you.
Wow. Let's look at government expenditure in the new year. It's projected at 47.9 trillion naira, including 15.8 trillion naira for debt servicing. So we're looking at 13.8 trillion naira in budget deficit. That's 3.89% of our GDP. The figures are raising so much concerns, with some saying it's perhaps a major risk to the fiscal space in 2025. How do you see government balance debt servicing with investment in critical sectors?
That will be a tough one for the government. There is a reason why the Fiscal Responsibility Act provided for a ceiling for debt to GDP ratio. The government over some years have not been complying.
We exceeded the debt target this year.
The government for several years
I've been doing that.
has been doing that. And that has been putting pressure not only on the Naira, but even on foreign investment and in overall compliance with the law and the purpose of the establishment of the Fiscal Responsibility Commission. So the first thing is for God, and luckily or fortunately, the government in the budget speech has opted to comply with the, perhaps subsequently, with the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. So that's one side to it. But definitely with the ambitious figures in this budget, I foresee a situation we are going to have cause to borrow because meeting those targets will be somewhat difficult.
At 13.08 trillion, that's like a budget deficit increase by 42.5%, if I get the maths right. And the president yesterday did acknowledge the need to reduce our debt pressure, debt exposure. He was saying that while borrowing remains a key tool to bridge our fiscal deficit, the government is committed to ensuring that debt servicing does not crowd out investment. How visible are these strategies to achieve this goal? Is this something we can see from here?
It's something to hope for, but realistically it will be problematic because the deficit is huge. The percentage for debt servicing is also huge. But it is not a bad thing to owe at all if we can see those things for which we are owing. But sometimes with Nigerians read that some of these borrowings end up in a way that they are not comfortable with. So if the ones we've borrowed, we can slow down from further borrowings, which if we can slow down and concentrate on servicing the current debt portfolio, that will be better. But because of the projection of the budget has been highly ambitious, some of the figures there may not be easily realizable. So I think we may still have cause to continue to borrow for a while.
Mr. Eze, you have to give me some hope here, Mr. President, because it's sounding like difficult, problematic. I'm looking for the silver line in the dark clouds.
I'll give you.
Particularly when Mr. President said the success of this ambitious proposal depends on disciplined implementation, transparency, and collaboration with all stakeholders. with all of these components in place, do you see some successes in this?
Yes,
document?
there will be. He mentioned discipline. For instance, if there is less corruption, these things will work out. If there is more transparency, but I was expecting, I am arguing in favor of participatory budgeting, whereby the citizenry will play a role, even by way of suggestions, in this prior to the presentation of budgets.
Okay.
There are some people that have certain contributions outside public servants. The suggestions will still go to public servants, but they might find merit. It will help the people to own it up,
to own the process,
and become stakeholders, because this one, they see it as between the teacher and the pupils. So when you have such a situation, it will be easier to monitor. Then again, all government institutions that are involved in public finance management should publish in their websites on quarterly basis their incomes and expenditures. And if they do, they will be also be showing the performance of the budget. Then we now know whether there is delay from the relevant Ministry of Finance in respect of release of funds. Then the people can start shouting, oh, why don't you release the funds so that this will be achievable? So the president was right by talking about discipline, but this is some message that should go to public servants, because the people in the streets, they are not the people that will release the funds. They are not the people that will monitor it. They are not the people that will publish it. And they are not the people. So MDAs, government-owned enterprises, ministry departments and agencies, they have a large role to play. So they need to also, if the people are aware, there will be proper engagement and the people can key into these policies. But if the people are not aware of what is happening, so there is need for enlightenment. Indeed. There might be no need to put pressure where pressure should. And in the absence of that, the president cannot be seeing everything. So the people's inputs, they are needed. So my expectation is that all this that the president has noted, all of them should be synchronized and passed out as perhaps government policy in a circular to show the final, although they are there, if you look at the budget office of the Federation, the circular contains most of these things, but there is need for monitoring and perhaps scoring all the implementers of the budget. Okay, this quarter, you scored 28%. This part of the government scored 45%. So if they know that there is competition in proper implementation of the budget, it will drive that potential discipline.
Some very interesting metrics and projections here. This budget assumes a decline in inflation from 34.6% to 15% in the new year. We're looking at an improvement in exchange rate from 1,700 naira to $1 to 1,500. How realistic are these projections? Because some are already saying at 1.5, due to the higher parallel foreign exchange, market exchange system, exchange rate we have. How feasible is this?
I think in terms of exchange rate, because the difference is just 200 naira, I think it may be feasible. I have my reasons. But remember, exchange rate doesn't stay at a particular sum from January to December. So those expressing this view, they are partly or even completely correct. You cannot have the exchange rate at a particular sum. January, February, it will be alternating. So perhaps if the president had said that it will alternate between 1,500 and 1,600, that could, but to say that it will come straight to 1,005, it's not impossible. It depends on a lot of factors. So I don't see that as a big problem. If government gets it right in other areas, because the exchange rate doesn't operate in vacuum. It operates aligning itself with many other factors. So if other factors are properly managed, it is possible it can come down. But that of inflation, I respectfully disagree with.
You don't believe, you don't have faith?
No, it will be magic. For it can happen, but it's magic. I will be surprised if you climb from 34.60% down to 15%. Although the president didn't say when it will happen within 2025. But let's take, for example, the issue of security, securing people to go to their farms. The budgets are yet to be released. The funds are yet to be released. Some may even get their own release. I mean, the security, assuming it's released February or end of January. And people do their planting. Early January, they're unable to go. So how will you ensure food security? So the security situation might be improving little by little. The whole country cannot completely be secured overnight as to ensure the sufficient food security that will go with it. So in terms of inflation, so I don't see inflation climbing down because we are still import dependent. So are we going to become export dependent overnight? So that all the costs, now how will it, cost of production, what happens to the national grid? Is there any assurance it will never collapse in 20, so as to ensure that manufacturers get sufficient energy to do their businesses, credit facilities to do their businesses, and other factors? And at the end of the day, all this, we attain that equilibrium that will ensure that inflation quickly runs down to 15%. So that's why I have my doubt with respect to that.
Let's take a short break. When we return, we take a closer look at the breakdown of the 2025 proposed spending plan. Defense and security taking the largest chunk at 4.91 trillion naira, followed closely by infrastructure, health and education. That will be after this break. We'll also open the phone line so we can get your contribution on the budget Mr. President presented to the joint session of the National Assembly yesterday. Stay with us, everyone.
Hello, TVC Communications. How can I help?
What makes TVC the right choice for my business?
Excellent question, sir. Let me share some exciting facts with you.
Start your day on TVC Entertainment with Wake Up Nigeria, a family and lifestyle show. Your view empowers women globally.
It's your view, let it count.
Entertainment Splash delivers the hottest celebrity trends. On TVC News, we keep you informed with breaking news and in-depth analysis of events shaping the world.
I will continue to speak the truth.
TVC News at 7 and TVC News at 10 p.m. delivers the most important stories of the day. Max FM, your hit music radio station, captivates listeners daily across Lagos and Abuja, making every commute more enjoyable. Adaba 88.9 FM is not left out, as it is the voice of Southwest. And on TVC Digital, we reach to million viewers daily. All together, pulls in over 17 million viewers daily. Contact us on 0707-272-8338 or marketing at tvccommunications.tv. Partner with TVC Communications today. Let's grow together.
Hello, everyone. So what do you think of the 2025 spending plan proposal by Mr. President yesterday? It's tagged Budget of Restoration, Securing Peace and Rebuilding Prosperity. We'll open the phone line shortly so we can get your thoughts, and you can also interact with my guest, Mr. Chukwemeka Eze, Tax and finance expert. Thank you so much for staying the course on the program. So let us look at what of the things Mr. President is counting on. He mentioned that his projections are based on a few observations. One of which is the fact that there's reduced importation of petroleum products alongside increased export of finished petroleum products. There's Dangote, the P8 refinery came on board recently, and more are expected, Kaduna and what have you. Bumper harvest driven by enhanced security, reducing reliance on food imports, increased foreign exchange inflows through foreign portfolio investments, and then higher crude oil output and exports, coupled with a substantial reduction in upstream oil and gas production costs. What do you think?
I don't know whether to take it from the first or the rear. If I take it from the rear, there is no guarantee that oil and gas costs of production will reduce. There is no guarantee, but let's give it to the president. He stands in a place he sees better than us. So that can be kept aside. Then the other ones you
talked about a bumper harvest.
Bumper harvest.
Driven by enhanced security.
That was the conversation.
We saw some improvement in security.
That was the conversation we were having earlier. So let's improve security like I submitted before we got to this, before the break. I'm not a security expert, but I take it that security is like a pregnancy. You get pregnant today, you don't put out the baby that same day. So, and I think the president, being the commander-in-chief, knows better the security situation in the country.
And where we are at the moment.
And where we are at the moment. The only thing I just have to say that if we want to remember 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals. We just have 6 years to go. So if and this goal number 2 is end to hunger. So if we must have this end to hunger, it is imperative that every budget must take cognizance of food security, because when the people are hungry, anything can happen. So I think it is from that perspective that the president is...
and we have seen firsthand how insecurity has driven up the prices of these commodities.
Sure.
And add to it the cost of energy and fuel for transportation.
But when it will be solved within the year, I don't really know, but it's a big challenge.
What do you think are the implications of the $75 per barrel crude oil price benchmark? How will government respond to potential fluctuations in the global market?
I think that benchmark is realistic, considering the flashpoints in the world. Syria, that Bashar al-Assad seemed to have gone. The HTS, led by al-Jolani, is having its own challenges. And you are aware that Israel is already in the buffer zone or gone beyond the buffer zone. So that flashpoint will continue. The Middle East will continue to boil. I'm giving a background why the oil prices will not slow down. The Russia-Ukraine war is ongoing. So the Sudan is still at war, civil war. So with potential flashpoints.
Let's hold that thought for a minute, Mr. Eze. Let's take Mohammed's call from Kaduna. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Please go ahead with your contribution. Oh, we lost that call. So you were giving us background to...
Yes, why the benchmark is realistic.
Yes.
We may even sell for more than that. So I think it's realistic. I agree entirely with the president that 2025, all these wars will not stop. And with the coming in of Trump for the second missionary journey, it might throw up more complexities that will make the oil price to remain on top.
The anticipation is high in that regard. But
yes.
Are there gains to anticipate with the Dangote refinery and our own refinery coming upstream?
It's a deal breaker. No, the Dangote refinery is a deal breaker. It has saved us a lot of foreign exchange we would have wasted. The level of import has certainly reduced. And because a situation where you depend entirely on foreign imports of, that means we will be having fuel scarcity more regularly. But now, if the Dangote was not there, but now that we have Dangote here, I think it's a big relief, not only to Nigerians not having frequent, unplanned fuel scarcity, but also the foreign exchange Dangote will be bringing in from exports. Recently, 3 countries within Africa we announced as having imported Dangote petrol.
We just lost Joy's call from Isolo. Apologies, you can try again so we can get your contribution and opinion on this conversation. Keep trying the number. You can also reach out to us via X. Just ensure that you tag me at Nifemi Oguntoye at TVC News NG and use the hashtag this morning so we can all get your contribution on the program. The allocations to defense and security, 4.91 trillion, infrastructure, 4.06 trillion, health, 2.48 trillion, education, 3.52 trillion. How are these allocations expected to drive economic growth? Of course, security has always taken its first position in recent years.
Sure. That of security is expected, yes, because we spend as if we are in a big war. So I not being a security expert, I try not to meddle into security issues, so I leave it for the experts, but all I can say, it was expected.
Uche is calling in from Inewi. Let's see if we can get that call quickly. Good morning, Uche.
Yeah, good morning, Olufemi.
Good morning. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, good morning, the guests in the studio. This is Uche calling from Inewi.
Good morning, Uche.
The budget, from my own point of view, from the budget, you can see that insecurity, so to say, has taken the large chunk of the money for 2025 budget, which for me, I think I have to say this, that maybe in the near future, the insecurity will come down to the point that education and health should be taking the large chunk of the money, because for me, apart from the natural insecurity, I think we also have some artificial insecurity situation in this country. Some of these people, that the people in the helm of affair of that should take care of the insecurity, some of them don't want the insecurity to fizzle out, and thereby, bringing the monies for them so that they will. The point I'm making is, can this thing come down? We will be, budgeting a large sum of money for insecurity, knowing fully well that some of the insecurity we are having, they are artificial. The natural ones, yes, are there, but the artificial ones should go down so that we know what we are budgeting for. That is my take. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Uche, for your contribution from Inewi. I remember having a conversation with the Kaduna State Governor recently. He was talking about what they call the Kaduna model, the non-kinetic approach. It has to do with some level of amnesty for bandits. And there were a lot of criticisms, especially from certain Christian society. And he said, you know what, we have fought this battle for years. We have tried everything. Now we have gone months after months, getting back people who have been abducted with no instances of abduction. It's given us a break to be able to develop economically. I think it's gain. One thing I found out is that education is great, health is great, but you can't spend money on that if there is no peace and if you don't have sustainable, safe environment For instance, now we have issues like Safe School Initiative. This budget is spending 3.52 trillion on education. Looks like some level of improvement, but at 4.91 trillion in security, it looks like it is at the base of every other thing. You don't agree?
I have my opinion on education, health, but let me make a comment with respect to your report on the summary of your conversation with the Kaduna State Governor. There is nothing wrong. I mean, if government considers in its opinion to grant amnesty in appropriate circumstances, but it should not be divorced from justice.
Absolutely.
That's why in countries where such things have happened, they institute what you call the Truth Commission.
Indeed.
So in that Truth Commission, citizens that have suffered one way or the other will appear. Yes, and a judicial commission of inquiry will look into their complaints, sieve out the facts from fiction.
Mr. George is standing by from Ikeja. I raised that issue with him because, peace cannot be sustainable if there's no justice. And he mentioned that that is also being considered, that none of these individuals are given money, and if any of them have been found to have killed someone, they will have to face the music of the crime they've committed. Mr. George, good morning.
Good morning, Nifemi, and good morning to the guests.
Good morning.
Nifemi, as ambitious as the budget is, I quite agree it's ambitious, but I'm concerned with the value that it brings. What do I mean? These days, you have a huge amount of money, but when you are spending it, you discover that the value you get from the money is so small. This budget of almost 48 trillion, if you want to put value to it, you discover that the budget of 26 trillion of last year, the value it will bring will not be higher than that. If anything, it could be less. The rate at which things are costly needs to be checked, and it stems from the rate of exchange. I don't know how comfortable the president is with even the rate of 1,500 that he projected for the budget. 1,500 to $1. That is, in my view, very worrisome. It looks artificial. We know that whenever the governor of the central bank comes out to, rigorously regulate the foreign exchange, it keeps dropping. The rate keeps dropping. Emphasis should be stressed on that one. Because let me just give you a recent experience. I went to Edo State for a 3 or 4 day journey. Do you know that to fuel my car to and fro alone took over 300,000 naira? Somebody that you could give 500 naira to in the past and will say thank you and be pleased. You will now have to take not less than 5,000 to such a thing before it can even be reasonable to him. What we need to do is to address the rate of the exchange of the naira. We know it is a common knowledge that everybody expected that with the advent of Dangote refinery and foreign exchange for import is reduced, then the rate of the dollar is. But it's not changing. What do you think is responsible for that? The dollar is still going into narrow escapes through illegal routes, some of which are what we know that some of our governors are doing. We need to check that if we can get value back to our money. Next year, it could be 100 trillion. And when you check, you see that the value that 100 trillion will give us will not be more than what 26 trillion was giving us.
I get your point, Mr. George. On a light note, next time you're going to they'll just fly. I mean, that's that's approximately how much it will take you to purchase a return ticket. But I think your point is well made. Thank you for your contribution this morning. He's talking about the value of the money.
Yes.
Relative to what it was last year.
Yes. It's right. But let's just get it straightforwardly. That only production can really make the exchange rate better than what we have. That's one side of it. Then the other side, for the president to say 1,500 naira per
dollar,
that is his optimal benchmark. That has reduced the expectation of those expecting that $1,000 will ever buy. No, 1,000 naira will ever buy $1. You know, some people have been expecting, that with time, maybe this can come to 800 naira per dollar, 1,000. But the president has spoken. Even business, those who deal in dollars, nobody will be wanting to come below $1,500. When the president has said, our best expectation is 1,500. So more or less he has benchmark. And one can forecast that dollar can never be below.
But are you taking his
1,
word to be more important than the force of production?
No. It's not a matter of which is more important. No, production takes precedent over his word.
Over his projection.
Over his projection. But how? I mean, production is not something that will happen overnight. At 35% interest rate, bank interest rate. So where are you expecting massive production?
Yakub has called in from Dokwemo. Good morning.
Good morning. And then good morning to your guests. Let me just say this. I totally agree with Mr. George. And then look at the analysis that he gives to us. If somebody can go by the road with his own personal car all the way from Lagos to Edo State, and then he get spending that huge amount of money just to buy PMX, 300,000 naira. Listen me. See, the government just needs to do some certain things, because I believe the quote unquote a major source of income of this country is PMS, petroleum things. If they can be able to do some certain things, we are talking about CNG and all that in this country. Listen, I think the government takes some subsidy concerning the kit that ordinary citizens can use to convert their petroleum car to CNG cars. I think Mr. George will not spend up to that kind of amount of money, because they told us that the CNG car is very good than using the petroleum stuff. So if somebody travel from Lagos State to Edo State, getting upstate, spending that kind of amount of money, 300,000, then you say CNG car spend 10,000 naira or 20,000 naira, I think Mr. Joe will not complain. So that's number one. Number two, in that budget, I heard you say that some certain amount of money is for student loan. But Nifemi, as a newscaster, as a journalist, can you just tell me, because it is very difficult for the children, for the students to access this very particular loan. I can tell you that, because do your investigative journalism, go to all those tertiary institutions, ask those children, as you be able to access this very particular student loan, you'll be able to count with your fingertip how many of them that got in this money, and then the huge amount of money goes to the student loan. That very particular money needs to be monitored, and then it needs to be able to be, the children need to be able to access it without stress.
I'm trying to. Good morning, Mr. Yakub. I'm trying to remember the exact figures, but I think I had about 300,000 beneficiaries in the past year, amounting from some billions of naira that have been spent. I think Mr. President quoted something like that yesterday. We'll get the details for you subsequently. But we have to start wrapping up. What do you consider the way forward? You know, you've seen the spending plan, and then we know what our reality is in the outgoing year.
Yes, I want to quickly look at education and health.
3.52
3.52 billion trillion naira
yes.
has been assigned to education. In my view, this is about 7% of the overall budget. It occurs with, since 1999, it has always been between 5 and 10%. And it's still very low, considering that education is the pivot of our human capital development. So, among the D8 countries, all other countries have a minimum of 20% for education in their budgets. Nigeria is 7% for 2025. In my view, that's abysmal. It means that the Japa syndrome for education purposes will continue. And there will not be significant change in what we have on ground, notwithstanding the NEL fund, without prejudice to the role that NEL fund will play. And that figure is low. Now, you are aware that goal number 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals it relates to education. Goal number 3 relates to health. Now, health financing is a very big challenge in this country. And when you are healthy, you'll be wealthy. So 2.48 trillion is a low mark. And that's about 5% of this, that's about 5% of the overall figure. And it's not going to bring significant impact on the universal health coverage. So I think next time we need to improve on that. And the obvious implication is that the tourism, health, it will continue.
Medical tourism.
Yeah, medical tourism will continue. But as you have said, the way forward.
Yes.
The way forward is accountability and transparency. Even if we have a small amount and we can manage it well. For instance, the infrastructural provision of 4-something trillion. If at the end of the day, the Lagos-Calabar Expressway, the Badagry-Sokoto Highway, if they become functional, even substantial part of it becomes functional, there will be openings all over the place for farm products to be brought into the cities, and there will be a reduction in cost of agricultural production. And this will end up providing a lot of relief to the citizenry. So if all these plans are put into effect by making citizens to buy into it and ensure that corruption is drastically reduced, definitely we'll get there.
We're counting on it.
Sure.
We have to remain
hopeful.
Hopeful.
Yes, because this is an era of renewed hope.
And count on the fact that this administration knows what it's doing. By the way, Mr. Yakub, I think I have the figure now. Mr. President did say yesterday that his administration has disbursed 34 billion naira through NEL Fund for 300,000 students. So you can do the maths. If they could achieve that in 18 months, what are they going to do, in the next coming years? We have the figures. 300,000 students are benefited out of a disbursed amount of 34 billion naira. Mr. Chukwuemeka Eze, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll return at the end of 2025 and see all these things, especially the inflation figure coming down to 15%, our revenue drive also hitting the target. Thank you so much for coming. That's our program today. Thanks for being a part of it. The conversation continues online. Follow me on X at Nifemi Oguntoye. See you again tomorrow. Good morning.